A teenage girl is on trial for stabbing her father, the actual charge being GBH, grievous bodily harm, with intent. But even before we found out why the girl stabbed her father, we learned that the family closed ranks from the word go. Neither the father, the mother or the older daughter wanted the younger daughter to be prosecuted. I can't say how the matter came to be prosecuted then, except to say that the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, most probably compelled it, as was, most probably, their legal entitlement, if not their legal duty.
Inspector, I'd like to come directly to the evening of the 8th of June. Now, did you receive a telephone call from the previous witness, Dr. Chapman?
Yes, I did. He telephoned me shortly before 11:30 p.m. As a result of what he told me, I went immediately to Fulchester General Hospital.
And did you, while at the hospital, interview the father of the accused, Mr. James Selsey?
I did.
Now, we've heard from Dr. Chapman that Mr. Selsey was admitted to Fulchester General Hospital with 3 stab wounds. Did you interview him about these wounds?
I did. I talked to him for nearly 45 minutes. He was extremely reluctant to make a formal statement, but eventually agreed.
My lord, that statement has been produced, Exhibit 5. Having eventually obtained a statement from Mr. Selsey, what was your next course of action?
I went to his home, number 14 Ridge Avenue, Fulchester, and interviewed the entire family.
Well, as my lord and the jury have not had the privilege of meeting the Selsey family, perhaps you'd tell the court to whom you spoke.
His wife and 2 daughters.
And were they cooperative?
No, sir. They were extremely uncooperative. Subsequently, all 3 accompanied me to Fulchester West Central and eventually made formal statements.
I'd like you to describe the manner of the various members of the Selsey family that evening when you interviewed them. Mr. Selsey, for instance.
Well, he was clearly in a great deal of pain and agitated.
Did he inquire about other members of his family?
Yes, he did. He wanted to know if they were all right. He was concerned about them, particularly Jane Selsey. He wanted me to reassure her that he was fine and that there was nothing to worry about.
Inspector, what was the manner of Mrs. Selsey on that evening?
Efficient.
It's an odd word. Can you elaborate?
Well, she had everything under control by the time I arrived at the house. The blood in the kitchen had been cleaned away. The knife used to attack Mr. Selsey had been cleaned and put back in the knife drawer.
Yes, she had in fact organised everything.
She had in fact seriously inhibited police investigation.
She was not aware of that, of course.
I don't know if she was aware of the implications before I arrived. I certainly made her aware of them when I questioned her.
I put it to you that she was surprised and distressed when you and your men appeared at her front door.
Not initially. She became distressed when she realised that there was every likelihood of her youngest daughter being charged, and that was later at the police station.
Yes, now the eldest daughter, Paula, what was her demeanour at this time?
Calm, sensible. She appeared more aware of the implications than any of the others.
What a close-knit, forgiving and loving family, especially the father, right? We can be somewhat less surprised, I believe, at the behaviour of Jane Selsey, the accused, immediately after the alleged stabbing.
I then cautioned Jane Selsey.
The accused?
Yes, I cautioned her and told her that she would be charged with wounding James Selsey, her father, with intent to cause bodily harm. She replied, "Why don't you leave us alone? This is a family matter."
And yes, we are also allowed to giggle at this next scene where the defence barrister begins his questioning of the police officer. And I suggest we do have a good chuckle at this point, because after now, there won't be much room for humour. Trust me.
Detective Inspector Wilkins, you were advised that Mr. Selsey had been stabbed by Dr. Chapman.
No, sir. Dr. Chapman didn't stab him. His daughter did.
That's what I meant.
It's not what you said, Mr. Hurst.
Perhaps I should try again, my lord.
Perhaps you should.
First, the stabbings were no accident.
And my client, Jane Selsey?
Hysterical, very emotional, and very defiant.
Hysterical. Understandable, surely, a mere 2 hours after she had accidentally stabbed her father. No further questions, Inspector?
Inspector, these accidental stabbings that my learned friend refers to, there were 3 accidental stab wounds, were there not?
I believe so, sir.
Secondly, the family is clearly hiding something.
And you also described the accused at the time as being very defiant. Now, in what way?
Well, she told me that she did not care a damn what happened to her, that I could not frighten her. She was sorry for what she had done, but that I could rot in hell before she would help me drag her family's name before the public.
With those words, the accused, Jane Selsey, doesn't, in my opinion, only mean that she's not prepared to bring shame on herself. She knows that she can't be defiant about being exposed as a violent daughter after what she has allegedly done to her father. She can be defiant about playing a part in exposing a shameful family secret, I'd say, and I believe that that is what she means. What is the Selsey family hiding then? Perhaps the father will provide us with the answer.
I suppose we're an old-fashioned family by today's standards. We're churchgoers. We don't go every Sunday, but we go fairly regularly. My wife and I have tried to instill in our daughters the same values and moralities that we ourselves respect.
A Christian family whose parents have sought to foster the values of respect and decency in their two children. What could they possibly have done wrong to anyone, never mind their own daughters? Evidently something has gone wrong in the Selsey family, or they wouldn't be where they are now.
We're not liberal or trendy. As our daughters grew up, we tried to ensure that they read good literature, listened to good music, that sort of thing. That isn't to say that they couldn't read other books or listen to pop. We merely wished to keep a measure of control over them, give them some standards. Respect for teachers. Respect for law and order.
Mr. Selsey's evident nervousness and stress, combined with the complete lack of conviction and force to his trite, tedious drivel, are what some might call psychological tales, I believe. He isn't even the one on trial, and yet he's totally squirming with panic, fear and guilt.
We're a loving, caring family. I didn't wish this prosecution. It's not needed. It's so unnecessary.
But your worry isn't actually for the fate of your daughter, is it, Mr. Selsey? It's for your own fate. But you, Mr. Selsey, are meant to be the victim in all this. What have you done, Mr. Selsey? Tell us, and tell us now.
What shall I tell you?
The truth, please, if that's not too much to ask.
During the month or so prior to the accident, Jane had been coming home rather late. The odd half hour here, the odd hour there. Previously, Jane had always brought her friends home to meet us so that we could get to know them. Whoever she was seeing during this period never called for her, never telephoned. He or they were people kept from us, so we had no way to evaluate them. On the night of the accident, Jane was over 2 hours late and we were beside ourselves with worry. Eventually, she came in. She told us that she'd been sitting in a coffee bar and had just forgotten all about the time. I was particularly upset that she'd caused her mother so much distress. I spoke to her harshly. She stormed into the kitchen to get herself a cup of tea or a sandwich, I think, and I followed her into the kitchen. She was as distressed as I was, I suppose. She began frantically waving a knife about, and I tried to grab it from her, and next thing I was on the floor covered in blood.
So a teenage girl who's been brought up by loving and caring parents in a Christian family stabs her father because after she came home late one night, he followed her into the kitchen. Oh my days, of all the lies that a person could dream up to cover for their child, that has got to be the most ridiculous one. Fine, let's see if the mother will tell us what really happened on the night in question.
For the last 5 years, your prime concern has been for your youngest daughter, Jane.
I wouldn't call it my prime concern. I have many interests. I'm not obsessive about Jane's welfare.
Mrs. Selsey, I am anxious that my lord and the jury get an accurate picture of your domestic life.
I can't see why. It seems highly irrelevant.
Mr. Selsey, I'm the sole judge in the court of what is and is not relevant. Please answer the question.
I object to this public inquiry into my family. I find the ordeal that we're all being subjected to quite disgusting.
I understand, and I can even sympathise with your objections. But we're all gathered here to ascertain exactly what happened in your home on a particular night. Now, do you understand that?
Yes, my lord.
Now, in order to do that, learned counsel clearly feels that we should know something of your way of life. And I direct you to answer that question.
I breed dogs. I'm interested in gardening. I'm a member of the WRVS. I have coffee mornings to raise funds for Oxfam. I also read the Daily Telegraph, if that's of any help.
From the peevish, muted and pathetic demeanour of the husband to this show of belligerence, confrontational attitude and aggressiveness from the mother. My oh my, whatever next?
Mrs. Selsey, after your husband was stabbed by your daughter, why did you not call the police?
It wasn't a matter that concerned the police.
Oh, come on now. Your husband is stabbed not once but 3 times by your youngest daughter, and you say this is not a matter for the police?
Yes, I do. It was an accident. She didn't mean to hurt James, not for a moment.
I think we're probably a bit bored with the accidental stabbing 3 times story, so I think at this point we'll cut to the chase.
It is not uncommon for teenagers to come home late, is it?
It is in my house.
What did you think she was doing? What did you think she was up to?
What do you mean?
Well, did you think she was sleeping with boys?
That's a disgusting suggestion.
Ah, could this be what it was all about? The daughter of Christian, loving, caring parents getting a reputation for herself as the local slut.
Had your husband accused her of sleeping with boys? Or being on the pill?
I will not answer such an obscene question.
Mrs. Selsey, I direct you to answer the question.
You can direct as much as you like. I'm not going to stand here and be insulted and humiliated by that man.
Mrs. Selsey, I consider that question relevant. To your knowledge, did your husband accuse your daughter of being on the pill?
I told you I will not be a party to such an obscene dialogue. We are a Christian family. A good family.
You're about as good as Hannibal flipping Lecter. Now, as you make your way to the cells for your obvious contempt of court...
Clearly you are in contempt of court, and unless you agree to answer Mr. Griffith's questions, I will rule that you will go to prison, and you will remain there until you purge your contempt. And that will only be done when you accept that I am the sole judge of what questions shall and shall not be answered by you.
Contempt. I intend to treat those kind of questions with the contempt they deserve.
Very well. Mr. Hurst, Mr. Griffiths, the witness will be held in a secure establishment overnight and remain there until she purges her contempt.
Let us all hope that your elder daughter will be the first in your family to actually tell the truth. Did her kid sister stab her father 3 times because he accused her of sleeping around and told her that she was bringing shame on the family?
To your knowledge, does your sister use any form of contraception?
Yes, she does. She's on the pill.
Do you know how long she's been using oral contraception?
My lord, really, I mean, how can this witness know the answer to that question? At best, her answer must be hearsay.
Not at all, Mr. Hurst. I don't know what answer the witness intends giving. She may allege that your client told her or that she was present on such and such a date. Anyway, in the fullness of time, you'll have the opportunity of cross-examining. Subsequently, you'll have the opportunity of putting your client in the witness box to deny, correct, or contradict anything this witness says. Continue, Mr. Griffiths.
Thank you, my lord. Miss Selsey, I was asking you if you knew how long your younger sister has been using oral contraception.
Since she was 12 years of age, certainly before her 13th birthday.
But surely at such a tender age your family doctor would not have given her a prescription for contraceptives.
He didn't have to. She got the pills from Mother.
From your mother?
That's right.
Are you absolutely sure about this?
I'm quite sure.
Well, is this something your mother or sister told you?
No, I was present when Mother gave them to her for the first time.
But why would your mother put a girl not 13 years of age on the pill?
I would have thought that was obvious. Her puberty had begun.
Yes, but surely your mother didn't seriously think there was a risk that one so young would indulge in sexual relations.
She didn't think it was a risk. She knew it was a certainty.
That's an absolutely astonishing thing to say. I must remind you, young lady, you are under oath.
I'm fully aware of that fact. I'm the first member of my family you've had in the witness box who's prepared to tell the truth.
You're saying both your parents have lied in the witness box?
Yes. The entire family agreed to come into this court and tell a pack of lies.
Then why have you now decided to tell the truth?
Why? Oh, lots of reasons, really, but mainly because my mother is now in a prison cell because she refused to tell the truth. But I know Mum well enough. She'd rather rot in there than tell you the truth about our family. Well, if by telling you the truth I can get her released, I think that's a good enough reason to put an end to this charade.
Are you telling this jury that your mother knew for a certainty that when your sister was under 13 years of age, she was about to, or indeed actually was, indulging in sexual intercourse?
I am.
But how could your mother be so certain?
Because my father had already been having sex with her for over a year.
Crown Court was in fact considered by many to be way ahead of its time on account of the very fact that it addressed taboo issues like these. This episode is from the year 1979. And yes, the plot just gets darker and darker and darker.
Now you are telling my lord and the jury that your father indulged in an incestuous relationship with your young sister from the time she was 12 years of age.
I am. Of course, I'm referring to the first time they actually had sex. For several years prior to that, he'd been doing everything you can short of actual sexual intercourse.
These are very serious allegations you're making. How can you be absolutely certain that what you're telling this court is true?
I'm quite certain. I think it's about time the lies stopped, don't you? I think it's about time the Selsey family faced reality.
How can you be certain what you're telling us is the truth? I mean, if, for example, your sister told you these things, they could have been merely childish fantasies.
Because I was there, I was in that house, I was present when my mother first gave Jane contraceptive pills. I was there when he cuddled her, fondled her, kissed her. Damn it, I was there the first time he had sex with her.
You were there, you were in the house?
No, in the bed. He'd made love to me first.
Some truly compelling acting going on here. I have to say, when I first watched this, I found this particular scene, as well as shocking and disturbing, also very moving.
He'd had intercourse with you as well?
Yes, that's what I said.
And all this would have been prior to you going off to university?
Yes, that's right. That's why my sister was being initiated to take over.
Was this the first time he'd had intercourse with you?
No, it was the last time. The first time, that was on my 12th birthday. I remember it very well. I got a brand new bicycle.
For your birthday?
No, because I'd been a good girl in bed with Daddy.
Are you telling this court that between the ages of 12 and 18, your father had an incestuous relationship with you?
I am.
Well, have you got any idea how many times this occurred over that period?
I've no idea of the exact number of times. I tried to work it out recently. Hundreds of times. It would happen several times a week. Daddy told me when I was very young, I can't remember exactly how old I was, that this was our special secret. Something I must never tell anyone else about. He made me promise. I've kept that promise until now. I'm not condemning my father. I love him, but not in the way he loved me, of course, but I care for him. He didn't force me to do anything I didn't want to do. It all seemed so right. It made me feel very grown up when I was still a little girl to know that Daddy had desired me. I remember the day when I asked him if I was better in bed than Mum. And when he told me that I was, and that he hardly ever slept with Mummy, I was thrilled. No one ever told me it was wrong. Then, of course, no one knew what we were doing except Dad and Mum, and they were both quite happy about it. We'd always been a very close-knit family, and somehow what Daddy and I were doing made us all that much closer. When we all realized that I would be leaving home to go to university, it became obvious that he intended to replace me with Jane. And that seemed all right, too.
Does it seem all right now?
No, it doesn't. You must remember, however, I've had 5 years away from home. 5 years to find my feet and compare the standards of my environment with other people's standards.
Yes, now on the 8th of June, were you visiting your parents?
Yes, I was at home.
And were you there when he was stabbed 3 times?
No, I was in bed.
But we heard earlier that the whole family were gathered.
It's not true. I was in bed and my mother was in bed. My father and sister were still up watching television. There was no one else present when he was knifed.
Well, why did you all persist in this story of a family argument caused by Jane's late homecoming, and that you all witnessed the accidental stabbings?
Because our parents wanted us to. Because they didn't want the truth to come out. They didn't want a fuss, scandal with the neighbours. Neighbours? What was the neighbours? I sometimes feel my whole childhood was controlled long range by the neighbours.
And just because of that, you all agreed to tell a tissue of lies?
Don't moralise, Mr. Griffith. You must remember Jane and I were brought up to honour our father and mother.
Again, well acted, well scripted, disturbing, and still, for me, rather moving. Not that there can be any justification for this sort of practice, if you like, but let's hear what the mother's reasons for putting her daughters through what she put them through actually were.
Did you always submit happily to your father's advances?
In the early years I did, but as I began to get older I did object from time to time. I gather even wives do that if they don't feel like it, don't they?
Yes, I gather they do.
Well, Mummy certainly objected. She'd rather take one of her dogs for a walk than go to bed.
So instead, she chose to pimp her own daughters to their own father. Nice. Mr. Selsey's got some explaining to do, don't you agree?
Now, regarding the evening of the 8th of June, is it a fact that only you and the accused were present when you were stabbed?
Yes. The others were in bed.
What was the real reason for this argument between you and your youngest daughter?
Well, did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard it, my lord. I wanted Jane to go to bed with me. She refused.
No, Daddy, please don't!
Look, I warned you previously that any further disturbance would result in your being taken below. You've chosen to disregard that warning. Take her down.
My lord, surely under the circumstances, the evidence that's been given, the facts that have been laid before this court, is it not understandable that my client should show some distress?
Distress, yes, but not contempt.
Will you hear me further on this, my lord?
Certainly.
Clearly perjury has been committed in this trial. I'm particularly anxious that the accused hear all the evidence.
Well, yes, that is a valid point. Very well, she may remain, but I'll have no more outbursts.
I am deeply obliged, my lord. Just sit quietly.
You were telling the court that on the 8th of June, you wanted to go to bed with your daughter, and she refused. Now, please, continue.
An argument developed.
Well, did you hit her?
No.
Did you threaten her?
No. It was just an argument. What I said previously about her getting excited and waving a knife about is true. I was worried in case she might hurt herself. I grabbed for the knife, and she accidentally stabbed me.
You still insist it was an accidental stabbing?
Of course it was. She wouldn't deliberately hurt me. We love each other.
No further questions, my lord.
You love each other.
That's right.
But this was no normal love of a father for his daughter, was it?
It seemed normal to me.
You debauched your own flesh and blood, not one of your daughters, but both of them, not a single aberration, but time and time again, year after year. You call that normal? I put it to you that on that evening, you desired this young girl's body.
I've already told you. I wanted to take her to bed with me.
Yes, indeed you have, and for once she had the strength of character to refuse your obscene advances. For once you were not going to use this young girl, your own daughter, as a plaything. I put it to you that you threatened her, and you frightened her, and you used physical violence on her in an attempt to get her into your bed. Far from attacking you, she was defending herself, keeping you away with that knife, wasn't she?
I have never in my entire life used violence on either of my daughters.
Oh, really? I suppose having sex with your 12-year-old daughter was your idea of gentle behaviour, was it? No further questions.
And now it's the turn of Mrs. Selsey.
You see, I've never been particularly interested in the physical side of marriage. In the earlier years, that put rather a strain on our relationship. James began to talk of a divorce. But as far as I was concerned, that was out of the question. It was unthinkable. I certainly was not prepared to countenance my husband taking a mistress. I was brought up to respect the sanctity of marriage. Standards are important to me.
The woman can hear herself. She must know how twisted and sick she sounds. That's quite enough from her, I think. Now it's the turn of the accused, Jane Selsey.
Now, you've heard your sister testify that when you were 12 years of age, your father took you to bed and had sexual intercourse with you. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Paula was in the same bed.
Now, did you on that occasion see him have sex with your sister?
Yes, I did.
Now, we have heard that prior to that incident, your mother started to give you contraceptive pills.
Yes. As Paula's already said, I didn't understand why I needed to take them. Mummy called Paula in and she explained to me.
Prior to the time that your father first took you to bed, had he previously assaulted you in any way?
Assaulted me?
Sexually assaulted you?
Look, you must understand. I don't regard the things we did as assaults and sexual intercourse. We made love.
Yes, I see. Well, prior to the first time you fully made love, your sister has testified that he'd been doing everything with you short of sexual intercourse. Now, is that true?
Yes, it is.
Can you recall how old you were when all this began?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. I can't remember a time when we didn't do things.
Things? What things?
Well, he would stroke me or caress me. That sort of thing.
Can you recall your feelings on the first occasion when your father fully made love to you?
I was very pleased. I knew it meant I was grown up.
That you were grown up?
Yes, that I'd be taking over from Paula. That I would be Daddy's best friend.
His best friend? Is that what he called you?
After I'd taken over from Paula, yes.
You are just 17 years of age.
Yes.
For the last 5 years, your father has been making love to you.
Well, for 5 years we've been doing it properly. But as I said, I can't remember a time when we didn't do things.
Do you have any boyfriends of your own age?
No. I'd like to, but Dad doesn't approve.
Well, have you talked to him about letting you go out with boys?
Oh, yes, dozens of times.
Yes, well, what was his reason for objecting?
He said I was too young.
He said you were too young.
That's right. Said that young boys couldn't be trusted, that I should wait until I was older.
But you are 17 years of age.
That's what I told Daddy, but it didn't make any difference.
Did you discuss this particular problem with your mother?
Yes, I did.
What was her view?
Daddy was right. She said I had all my life in front of me, that I could easily ruin it by going out with the wrong boy and getting involved. I told her I didn't want to get involved, just to go to dances and things like that.
Yes, now what did you take her to mean by getting involved?
Sleeping with boys, making love to them. Silly, really. Because I only wanted to do that with Dad anyway.
Did you tell her that?
I tried to, but she wouldn't listen. She got rather upset when I mentioned Dad and stopped me saying any more.
Was your mother ever there when your father took you to bed?
You mean in the room?
Yes.
Good Lord, no.
Well, was she ever in the house?
Oh, yes. She'd be busy doing something or asleep in her own room. Other times she'd be out walking her dogs.
Now, when the police questioned you, Detective Inspector Wilkins testified that you said, "Why don't you leave us alone? This is a family matter." Did you say that?
Something like that.
Had you been previously told to say that by anyone?
You mean Mummy?
Or anyone?
No, whatever I said I personally felt.
But the statement that you made to the police about the argument about coming in late and all the rest of it, that wasn't what you personally felt, was it?
No.
So why did you tell that story to the police?
It was agreed upon before Dad went to the hospital.
Who suggested it?
My parents. Mainly my mother.
Mainly your mother. Did your parents tell you why they wanted you to lie?
Mummy kept going on about the scandal and what the neighbours
Yes,
would say.
was she referring to the fact that your father had been stabbed or to the relationship you had with your father?
Both. Mainly Dad and me.
So, because of your parents, you lied to the police.
Yes.
You lied to the magistrate's court.
Yes.
To protect your father.
To protect all the family. Although it didn't make any sense to me.
What do you mean?
Well, both Mum and Dad were so anxious that what Daddy and I do wasn't made public. But all my life they both approved of what we were doing. It confused me.
Yes, I'm sure it did. So, on the night your father was stabbed, you and he were alone at the time?
Yes. The others had gone to bed. We were watching television. I got into the kitchen to make some supper when Dad and I began to have an argument.
Now, your father has previously testified that the argument occurred because he wanted to take you to bed and you refused. Is that right?
That wasn't what started the argument.
What did?
Paula.
But I thought you said you and your father were alone.
We were. He began talking about Paula, saying how proud he was of her. It was the same every time she came home for a visit. All I heard was, Paula's such a fine young woman, Paula's such a bright, intelligent girl. It didn't seem fair.
Why not?
Because I'd taken over. I was supposed to be his best friend. The way he fussed over her when she was there, you'd have thought they were still having a love affair.
And were they?
They certainly were not. I'm his girlfriend. I'm the special one.
So, on the evening of June the 8th, the argument with your father was provoked by his attitude towards your sister.
Yes. I told him I resented all the attention he was giving her.
Were you jealous of your sister?
Yes, I was. I didn't see why she should come home whenever she felt like it and get all the attention. It wasn't fair.
Did you tell him that on that particular evening?
Yes, I did. I'd gone into the kitchen, and he made some remark about how proud he was of Paula. It was the last straw. I felt very hurt. I told him he was being very cruel to me, that he didn't love me. He said I was being silly, that no one could replace me, not even Paula. I thought he was just saying it to calm me down, and it made me even angrier. He called me a foolish little girl and said something about it being time I grew up. I told him if I was grown up enough to sleep with him, I was grown up. He put his arm around me and suggested we should go to bed.
Together?
Of course. But by now, I was so angry that I said no, I wouldn't. I'd never said no before. I remember I was waving a knife around. There were more words, but I can't remember what was said. Then he was lying on the floor, covered in blood, and I was screaming.
Jane, did you deliberately stab your father 3 times? Jane?
I honestly don't know.
I think it's obvious that she did it on purpose. She was angry with her dad and she wanted to get her own back on him. What's stellar acting. The parents are taken into custody for what they've done to their daughters, and Jane, the accused, is given a conditional discharge. If you've enjoyed this video, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.